Absolutely. This is fundamentally a civil rights issue. The Equality Act has to be signed into law to give us all equal access to that American dream. And I think the other through line here is that oftentimes we've been able to find ourselves on the right side of these social issues. For example, the same things that they're saying about trans people today, they were saying about lesbian gay people 20 years ago, and now the Respect for Marriage Act is the law of the land. The same horrific things they're saying about trans people today, they were saying it about people that lived with HIV and AIDS 30 years ago, and now we've significantly reduced stigma, and we're on our way to ending that epidemic in this generation, in our lifetimes. We can make change on this, but it starts by opening our hearts and minds and acknowledging that in the story of America, so many of us have faced discrimination. When we've come together, when we fought and understood that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, we've been able to change the course of history.
I was very moved by your testimony, Ms. Gaines, especially because I don't think most Americans understand what it is to be an elite athlete. I'm here because I was a Division I player, fundamentally 50, 60-hour work weeks on my athletic skills. The first year I stepped out, you might have had this experience yourself, I felt like, oh my God, this is how civilians sort of live when you have just so much time. You're not getting up and doing practices. The experiences you had, and the picture that my colleague, Senator Hawley, showed is just outrageous, deplorable, and unacceptable for you talking to your truth. Ms. Walker, what stuns me about what we're seeing right now is a lot of Americans don't understand how widespread the bullying and the threats and the violence are, not just to those of us who are in elite competition, who often face dealing with these issues as the NCAA is dealing with them, but the widespread nature. I think, Ms. Robinson, in your longer testimony, you were talking about the unbelievable, something's happened in the last decade of this rise of threats and bullying and violence and murder of LGBTQ Americans at levels that are frightening to me. And Ms. Walker, I want to just end with you because I don't think most Americans understand what it's like to try to just live your truth for the average American that is LGBTQ or trans. Could you just tell one more time, as you've listened to the testimony today, just how it feels just to be a teenager living your life as you do?
Yeah, it definitely is a struggle day to day. Growing up in a conservative state where there is a lot of misinformation spread about what trans people are, what we do, and how we're just like everybody else, it's definitely been hard for me. Like I said in my testimony, I was severely bullied in middle school to the point where I had to drop out of public school because there was so much hate every day in the hallways, being misgendered, being dead named, and it got to physical violence at a certain point. And so I had to drop out of public school for that year, and the school wasn't doing anything about it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the latitude. And again, if this is about protecting our children, the stories of Ms. Walker and other trans children, it just needs to be heard about what you're enduring. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Title IX was a landmark civil rights law. It helped create the incredible breadth of women's sports and girls' sports that we see across the country. I believe in girls' sports. I believe in women's sports. I'm the proud father of 2 daughters who are both athletes. I think participating in competitive sports is a wonderful thing for a young girl. I think it is a wonderful thing for a woman. And I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters, and they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for your courage. You are relatively young, but you have demonstrated incredible courage. And because you have dared to speak up, you have been demonized, you have been vilified. I saw when you were attacked by a leftist mob at San Francisco State University for daring to speak up. You had an incredible record as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. You were a 2-time NCAA All-American. You were a 5-time SEC champion. You're an SEC record holder and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. But yet on March 27th, 2022, something changed. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed, and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T, so what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home. End of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage, that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make, will overcome that male advantage. Especially in sports like swimming, where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, but when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
I mean, what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition happened,
I'm going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is
but
that
I
a
also
yes?
think
So I'm
that
trying to
when
get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
Is
there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me ask
gender.
you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do
do-
believe
why
that
do
women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would
determine
like
that
to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100-meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record.
Without objection, Senator Padilla.